In this study, we're going to consider James chapter 2, verses 14 to 26. Please read the verses. If you thought zombies were not mentioned in the Bible, then think again. But before we get to that, we need to understand what the Bible means by the word justification. Some have defined this as just as if I'd never sinned. That's quite clever. It is a start, but does not really go far enough. If that was all the Bible meant when it spoke about justification, then all it would do would be to take us back to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden before the fall. When the Bible speaks about justification, it means the rock-solid basis upon which God demonstrates that me, a sinner, is now and forever fully right with God. We are justified by God, Romans chapter 8, verse 33. By his grace, Romans chapter 3, verse 24. It is made personal to the individual by faith, Romans chapter 5 and verse 1, in the shed blood of Christ's death on the cross, Romans chapter 5 and verse 9. And it is by works, James chapter 2 verse 24, that the reality of this justification is demonstrated to the world. Verse 14 poses the question, what good is the claim to have faith that is not accompanied by works? I may claim to support Liverpool Football Club. After all, who in their right mind wouldn't? However, if I never go to the match, or watch them on telly, or read about them in the news, if I don't know who their best players are, or how their season is going, you might rightly question whether my support is genuine or not. It would certainly not benefit Liverpool Football Club, or anyone else for that matter. James is envisioning a similar situation with someone who says that they have faith. Now let's be clear, only God knows the reality of an individual's conversion. And as the righteous judge of all the earth, he will do right. But normal Christianity is the beautiful blend of an inward faith towards God that results in bountiful works that benefit others. In this way, the reality of what is internal is seen externally by others. Imagine that I am homeless and hungry. On hearing this, you message me and say, I hope you won't be cold tonight sleeping on the streets. And don't feel bad about not having any food, whilst at the same time living in a huge house with plenty to eat. What good to me are your kind thoughts and words? None at all. So saying that I have faith in God without displaying any of the fruit of the Spirit is a lifeless faith. And I might wonder whether there is genuine faith there at all. You see, mere intellectual assent to a fact is nothing at all. God exists, and me saying so is only stating the blindingly obvious. Even the demons acknowledge that God exists. And in fact, they go further. They tremble, knowing the judgment that is going to fall upon them. That's a right and a proper response to God. So now James continues his argument by saying, show me your faith without doing something. Well, that's impossible. The only way that something invisible can be seen is by its effect. I can show you the wind by pointing to the treetops. I can show you the reality of my faith by showing you the change that it has accomplished in my life. These are the works that James is speaking about. And so he cites two examples from the Old Testament. It would be hard to think of two more different individuals, one a Jew, the other a Gentile, one rich and respectable, the other a prostitute. First witness to support James is Abraham, and the example he gives is found in Genesis 22, where Abraham's faith led him to be ready to sacrifice his own son. Sometimes people claim that James contradicts Paul, who also uses Abraham as an example of justification by faith. However, Paul cites Genesis chapter 15 as support. Many years had elapsed between the two events. Abraham had a deep and lasting faith in God, and so before God was made right. Did that dependence upon God mean anything to Abraham? Well, yes it did. And we read about that in Genesis 22. Here was a clear demonstration to all, his servants and family, those who read the Bible now, and the angelic realm of heavenly spectators, that Abraham's faith was no mere intellectual acceptance of facts, but a life-changing relationship with his God. Imagine for a moment you were one of Abraham's servants. You had seen the tears in his eyes and the ashen pallor of his face, the stoop of his shoulders as he made that journey to Mount Moriah in readiness to sacrifice his son. You would be left in no doubt about the cost of what God had asked Abraham to do. You would realize that Abraham's God really must be a great God if he was ready to do this in obedience to his faith. It ought to be that our friends and neighbours could say the same about us. How sad it is that so many see Christianity as merely something we believe, because so many Christians never live out their faith. It has barely changed them at all. Next up in the dock for the defence of James's teaching is Rahab. You can read her story in Joshua chapters 2 to 6. She had heard that the all-conquering Israelite army was on the way. She recognised that God was with them and that her gods were no gods at all. Here was her inward faith. So she decided to do something about it. When the Israelite spies came, she hid them and sent the soldiers of Jericho away on a wild goose chase to keep the spies safe. It is clear her faith changed her behaviour, even to the cost of her own people. James is not teaching here that to be saved we have to have faith and then good works. Apart from faith, the examples James uses are not good works at all. Child murder and treason are clearly bad works. Nobody would encourage this kind of behaviour as a way of life. It's only because they had faith in God and that he told them to do what had to be done, and they obeyed, that these are good works. Obedience to God is always good. Faith alone saves us for eternity, but that faith must be shown by good works. So let us summarise. We are saved for heaven by faith in God alone. That faith must then have an impact upon our lives, and we show the reality of the decision we have made to follow Christ by what we do. Christianity is a spectator sport, and we are the players. The chapter concludes with a gruesome example that would have shocked his Jewish readers. He likens faith to the human body. He says that works are the spirit. The body without the spirit is dead. We would call it a zombie. Yes, I might be walking around eating and breathing, but if my faith has not changed my life, then I am a part of the living dead. Destined for heaven if my conversion was real, although you might be allowed to question that, but of no worth whatsoever. James would encourage each one of us who owns Jesus as Lord to demonstrate the reality of our faith by many and varied acts of obedience to our God and to his word. These are works that justify us to a sceptical world and the cloud of witnesses that look on. Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 1.